By the end of Splatoon 2, that game was known for shooters being the best class in the game, known to be a bit overtuned. And now with Splatoon 3, there is a clear candidate for the best class in the game, and has been pretty much since their launch, which is Splatanas. Are they too powerful or not? If you enjoy this analysis, consider subscribing or becoming a member to help support the channel. Let's get started with what I'm talking about exactly. Main weapon power. I'm not looking at a main weapon plus whatever sub and special it's getting, though those are somewhat relevant. I'm just looking at the power level of the main weapons. And I think there's one thing you can't really deny. Splatanas are definitely the best class in the game, and they've been labeled as such for quite some time now. You can make the argument that certain other powerful main weapons are able to compete with them, like Squeezer or Slosher, but when you compare them to other entire classes, nothing comes close to the main weapon power of the Splatanas. The Cavitator right now is an established top tier, Stamper has been a top tier for forever, and while Wiper is a very good weapon right now, it was even better during Crab meta, and since the most recent Hammer buff, it's arguably at a top tier now. So I think there's definitely an overall gap between the power level of Splatanas and most other main weapons in the game. However, that doesn't mean they're flat out too good. For that, we have to talk about the concept of overall main weapon power. How strong do we want the main weapons to be on their own? And we can look back at 9.0 for an example of this. Before 9.0, the metagame was mainly decided by a lot of powerful main weapons. The staples of it were things like Splatana Stamper, Squeezer, Range Blaster, and Slosher being such incredibly good main weapons that they could take crucial fights or poke for potential engagements throughout the entire game, regardless of if specials were active. They controlled a lot of the game's pacing because you had to acknowledge the power of those weapons. In 9.0, the overall power level of some of the best weapons in the game, like those I just talked about, but also a few others like Pencil and Edit, were slightly toned back. And even then only slightly. The harshest nerfs of Squeezer and Range Blaster still kept them at a level where they can still, and have still, won some of the biggest tournaments in the game. But even then, the gap between main weapon power and the ability to influence the game through special weapons has closed. The power level of weapons that can just get specials reliably has gone up relative to the nerf of those weapons. And that's where I think this gets more complicated, because if we take Splatanas or other really good main weapons now like Slosher and lower the power level down again, it might be too much. You might now have a problem where what is supposed to be the most powerful main weapons in the game can't influence it enough to avoid dealing with certain specials that would instead become the main force controlling the game. Right now, I think there's a relatively healthy balance between the ability of certain main weapons to influence fights and certain special weapons, and that kind of dynamic is important for keeping fights interesting, for making the pace of the game easier to influence for individual players, and for allowing high impact and high excitement plays to be able to happen. So in that case, I have the conclusion that most main weapons need a power level increase rather than Splatanas needing a decrease. I would like more main weapons to be of the power level of Splatanas. But that's not quite the end of the video here. Even if their main weapon power is balanced right now, maybe they still have aspects of the weapons that are overtuned or really annoying. Splatanas can do so many different things, for example. Maybe their specific stats like up-close one-shots compete with rollers too much. There was a lot of concern with roller and decap, for instance. So let's take a look at the weapon's specific most broken attributes. First up with Splatana Wiper is of course its mobility. I mean, this weapon strafes so fast, it's barely less than just walking around by default. This is able to outspace so many main weapons that, paired with the fact that it also has such solid range on its attack and charge slash, that could be too much, right? Well, I don't think so, and for one simple reason. You can't influence the strafing speed with run speed up. It doesn't work on Wiper, or any of the Splatanas, and I think that's an intended trade-off here. While Wiper strafe speed is the fastest in the game without any perks, the second you introduce run speed up to other weapons, you have options like mini-spalling that are able to move faster than it. And more importantly than that, Wiper is also balanced out by having a weaker kill time if it's not up close. So it's not able to abuse its mobility stat to a level not seen by other weapons. There are options like Inkbrush that are faster, weapons like Mini that can get quicker through gear abilities, and their kill time weakness still leaves them comparable to other options, like Dually Squelcher's mid-range mobility. So I think Wiper is fine. Splatana Stamper might be a little bit more difficult though. I mean, the range on this thing is absolutely insane. The amount of combos it can do at a distance when you pair it with its burst bomb, that has to be too much, right? Well, the excuse to make that okay has been, but the weapon's really difficult though. And this is always going to be a point that's going to be hard to communicate in a video like this. So I can only really give off some experience here, but in my opinion, as someone who's played through multiple Splatoon games at the highest level, is that Splatana Stamper is the hardest weapon to invest in and win at. I have seen top players who have been really good with other weapons switch to Splatana Stamper and lose a ton of mechanical skill. You basically have to reset and learn how to play Stamper in a completely different way. And even then, you still have a very tight window to get your combos off, a lot of downtime, and a whole ton of different factors between the aim required for the slashes in one shot, multiple different modes of fire, different shot velocities, and, you know, Zipcaster, hardest special in the game, especially on sword, to where I would say at the power level Stamper's at, yes, that does balance it out. Generally, the more dedication a weapon requires, the stronger its power should be. Otherwise, you're not going to see many people using it because of the high investment. And Stamper is in a good spot and fills a role as that really difficult but really expressive weapon if you put the time in. Maybe one day we'll be in some 20xx level where our Stampers are absolutely ridiculous, and maybe then they'll have to tone it down. But right now, other strong midlines like Slosher and especially S-Blast see more use than Stamper. It doesn't dominate, and that tells me that despite it being such a powerful main weapon in the eyes of good players, it's clearly not good enough to be taking over the game. The last Splatana though is the one that probably gets critiqued the most, Decapitator. This one's much easier than Splatana Stamper, even if similar in areas. I mean, that dash and hitbox is absolutely ridiculous, but I think it's mostly fine. Truth be told, if Decav was as broken as people said it was, it would just be seeing more usage rate. I talked about how Stamper isn't taking over anything, but Stamper is more common than Decav, despite it being the more difficult option. It's relatively agreed on that Decav is the slightly weaker weapon of the two. However, I think you can still make an argument that it has a very low skill floor that can be very annoying to deal with because of the big hitbox it has. And while I do agree that it's a bit of a problem, I'm not sure if it's really enough of an issue to warrant fixes. I think if you buffed other main weapons to be closer to it, it would mitigate some of that issue. So overall, I don't think it's too big a problem. While its dash slashes are certainly strong enough to make it one of the best weapons in the game, it still has enough of a speed problem to be punishable in the right scenarios. That's why it hasn't completely taken over despite having such a strong kit. And even if you look at other comparable options like Roller, they're ranked relatively similarly and both find success, which tells me that Decav isn't overshadowing any of its competition. However, there is one overtuned aspect about Decav that I want to talk about. I think it is very unfair with its super jumps. Now, there are weapons that can move away from its landing, like dualies, or options that can fight on its landing, like Rollers landing with the flick or Blasters with the direct, but those are usually good at either one or the other, and are difficult to use at that. Even the other Splatanas like Stamper and Wiper require an up-close direct hit in order to kill you. Decav not only has a giant hitbox, but more importantly, the dash plus the slash range combined can kill you further than you can see the jump in with Stealth Jump. And that is where I think it becomes a problem. Funny enough, we had this issue in Splatoon 1 with Dynamo landing with horizontal flick, and their solution ended up being nerfing the ability of Stealth Jump to prevent you from attacking when you landed, which just felt awful and I think would also feel awful here, but I don't know, maybe increase the detection range of Stealth Jump a little bit so people can see jumps from further away. Even Decav aside, it's a little ridiculous how close you have to be to see them, so I think on top of fixing Decav, it would make some of the other weapons that can defend their landings a little bit less annoying. But really, that's it for me. I think that while Splatanas are a very strong weapon class, they have just barely kept their power level in check to not be too good. It's definitely walking a very fine line, but as of right now, I think more strong main weapons in the game are a good thing. And Splatanas are definitely one of them that makes Splatoon an overall better game. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time.